Union Bank Nigeria PLC has agreed to sell its majority stake to Titan Trust Bank Limited. According to a press statement published on the Nigerian exchange on Thursday, the deal will see existing core investors in Union Bank, that's Union Global Partners and Atlas Mara, and other shareholders divest their core holdings totaling 89.39% in Union Bank over to Titan Trust Bank. Now, joining us to discuss further, Joshua Odebisi, who's an analyst with Vetiva Capital. Joshua, you're very welcome. Good morning to you. Nairametrics had a headline saying a 2-year-old bank is acquiring a 104-year-old bank. What do you make of this deal?
Well, it's quite interesting. I mean, that is exactly what it looks like. You know, you have a 2-year-old bank with total assets of less than 140 billion, taking over a bank with over 2 trillion in assets. On paper, that doesn't really make a lot of sense. Yeah. But, I mean, we can say that Union Bank, maybe they've not been as ambitious as they should have been. For a bank that's over 100 years old, you would imagine or expect them to be closer to the FBN with, over 7 trillion in assets rather than just floundering at 2 trillion. So maybe there's just been a bit of a lack of ambition from management. And so maybe what Titan Trust will probably do is come in and be a bit more aggressive in trying to grow and expand to get it up to that level over time.
Back in 2019, there was all sorts of rumors that Access Bank was taking over Union Bank. Access Bank put out a statement, so did Union Bank. So going 2 years now, it's about to be 2022. We said that this just validates that the bank was on the shelf, for sale shelf, as it were.
Absolutely. So I think from the time that rumor started, it was clear that Atlas Mara was interested in selling their 25% stake in the bank. And of course, because of the reputation that Access Bank had at the time, they just acquired Diamond Bank. They've been making acquisitions across Africa. It was almost a no-brainer to put the two together and say that they were going to just come in for that bank. However, at the time they came out, they put paid to those rumors, but we still expected that, this would be a very simple acquisition. A 2 trillion naira bank would probably, boost the net assets of any of the tier 1 or any fellow tier 2 banks to sort of, give them a bit more, muscle in the market. But that did not materialize. But we did expect that definitely somebody would come in for the bank. We just did not, see Titan Trust.
Exactly. Came out of nowhere. Yeah. So what does Titan Trust gain here? Is it existing Union Bank? I mean, we don't know what's going to happen, whether there'll be a rebranding, name change, or we heard Dr. Abati this morning emphasizing that the things should stay as they are, as far as the name of the bank. But what's Titan going to gain from all this? How do we?
Well, they're gaining quite a lot. I mean, they're gaining almost 300 branches. They're gaining, quite a lot of ATMs. They're gaining a wider footprint to start with, and they're gaining over 2 trillion in total assets, coming from less than 140 billion, like I mentioned, at the end of 2020, to well over 2 trillion now. They're putting themselves firmly in the tier 2 space to compete with the likes of your Fidelities and your FCMBs and the likes.
Glad you mentioned that, because that's my next question for you. How would you assess the tier 2 banking space in Nigeria presently?
Well, what I'll say is definitely there's been quite a lot of progress made. The tier 2 banks are quite different from the tier 1s in the sense that they have to be quite more efficient just because obviously they're operating on a smaller scale. But what we've seen is the likes of Fidelity Bank, for example, they're doing very, very well with regards to the NPLs. In fact, I'd say that the tier 2 NPLs are actually healthier than the tier 1s in some cases. And so what we've seen is they've really focused on their risk management strategies. And so hopefully this will just add to that wider pool, and there'll be even a lot more competition because those tier 2 banks really focus more on the retail, less, in comparison to your GTs and your Zeniths and the rest in the tier 1 space.
Well, I think we have the top 5 gainers yesterday. Union Bank was I think it was up by 9% or so, between 7 and 9%. Top 5 gainers yesterday on the stock exchange. 9.7%. What, as far as this rally is concerned, what were any investors who are buying now, hoping to take advantage of?
Well, I mean, there are some possibilities. On the one hand, we're not entirely sure what the structure of the acquisition will be, whether Titan Trust will acquire all of that majority stake and then come to the shareholders and take the rest of it and basically take it private and delist it from the exchange, in which case investors would be wanting to take advantage of whatever price or premium they would have to buy the remainder of the shares from. Or maybe they're just anticipating that this change in management would, bring about some growth, potential growth, and, increased ROE for the company over time.
And just, we always do this. Anytime an analyst drops an acronym, ROE for our viewers is
return on equity.
Return on equity. Thank you. As we go into the new year, are there any other banking stocks that you like?
Well, I mean, with regards to acquisitions, we can't really say for sure,
right.
But there's definitely potential. Now, that potential would become, more concrete if the CBN were to come out tomorrow and say there has to be recapitalization.
Okay.
But what we also have to remember is that the landscape of banking in the country or in Africa is changing quite significantly, and we know that from next year we're going to see your MTN and Airtel start to play in that space as well. And so that is also going to change the landscape quite significantly because they will be allowed to take deposits. They will be allowed to make transfers. And if they are giving a better price than the current banks are offering on their digital offerings, on their USSD offerings, then that could potentially shift the balance and remove some fees and commission income, some non-interest revenue from the banks to the telcos. Yeah. And that will definitely shake up the landscape.
So how do you see it? Is it good? It's definitely, in fact, well, based on your answer, not only telcos, the fintechs as well. That whole pool, is that, how do you see them all jostling around for, I guess, position? Who's the ultimate winner? Is it the customer? Is that who ends up winning here? Absolutely
is the customer because, like I said, there will definitely be, some sort of competition, and that will probably affect the cost of making transfers, the cost of withdrawing money, the cost of everything, in general, except maybe the cost of borrowing, just because, that's a little bit more difficult to adjust. Mm-hmm. However, ultimately, of course, the customer is the one who wins when fintech and telcos and the traditional banks are all competing for the same number of customers. So that's what's going to happen.
Do you just follow up on that? Do you see less physical branches or banks slowing down on scaling with physical? I mean, when I asked you what Titan was gaining, you mentioned, of course, the branch presence, footprints of Union Bank. So as far as the competition between the telcos, between fintech, between banks, what do you see? How do you think things playing out with physical branches going forward?
Well, we may not see the same aggressive growth and expansion and opening of physical branches as time goes on, because obviously we've seen that a lot can be done on online and through the digital channels. Yeah. However, there will still be a need for some physical presence for the foreseeable future, just because when you want to expand into some areas, especially if you're not a telco, you may still need a physical presence. But then that's where agency banking comes in. So rather than having to set up a whole new branch, you just have banking agents in the more remote areas that can deal with customers directly. And also that will eventually lead to further growth. So that may just be the way it evolves, instead of pure just building more branches.
Great stuff. Are we in store for any others? You wouldn't know this, but are you in store for any surprise acquisitions in 2022? What do you think will happen?
Well, I mean, this one sort of came out of left field, so we definitely expect anything. Yeah. I would say that the banking space is very exciting right now because of that level of competition. So a lot of banks will be thinking about their strategies and how they can expand and how they can take advantage of the market. So maybe there might be some mergers, maybe there might be some new entrants entirely. Things like that will possibly happen.
Okay, I'm squeezing 30 extra seconds here, but do we? The market needs that, yes? We want more of these type mergers, acquisitions, in an exciting banking space.
Absolutely, because this will grow the market, this will grow the stock exchange. So all of this will bring more attention to the Nigerian economy.
Fantastic. Joshua Odebisi, analyst with Vetiva Capital, thank you so much for joining us to talk about the banking sector.